The bite that started it all, Leo stepped off the ship and onto the hot, dusty ground of the Canary outpost. The sun here was red and angry, just like the alien soldiers that trained every day in the burning heat. Leo wasn't a soldier. He was an engineer sent to fix the energy core that powered the entire base. But to the Canary, that meant nothing. To them, he was just a soft, weak human. The Canary were a proud warrior race. They had sharp teeth, strong muscles, and dog-like features fur-lined. Ears, tails that showed emotion, and eyes that glowed in the dark. And among them, Kira stood out. She was tall, fast, and fearless. She was the youngest war captain in her unit, and she hated the idea of a human walking around like he belonged there. From the moment Leo arrived, Kira watched him. He moved calmly. Not afraid, but not arrogant. He greeted others politely, even when they ignored him. He smiled when they mocked him. To her, it was weakness. So, when he came to the training hall to check the power lines, she saw a chance to show him his place. "You walk like you own the ground," she growled, stepping in front of him. Leo looked up from his tools and blinked. "I just walk," he replied with a shrug. "Then walk around me," she said, stepping closer. But Leo didn't. He stood still. The crowd of Canary soldiers stopped their drills. They watched with interest. Tension filled the air. Then it happened. Kira bared her sharp teeth and suddenly lunged forward. She bit Leo's hand not hard enough to break bones, but hard enough to show she was stronger, higher, dominant. A loud gasp ran through the hall. Everyone expected Leo to cry out, too. Back away, to run. But he didn't. Leo looked straight into Kira's glowing eyes. Without a word, he grabbed her arm, leaned forward, and bit her shoulder, not with rage, not to hurt, but in the same way she had bitten him. It was sharp, controlled, and confident. Silence. Total silence. Kira froze, her body tensed. Her ears twitched. Her tail stopped moving. No one had ever done that before. No one had dared. Then he let go and calmly wiped his hand on his pants. "If you're done, I need to finish my work," he said, walking past her like nothing had happened. Kira stood there, shocked. Her jaw slightly open, her body still confused. She didn't know what to feel: anger, respect, or something else. All she knew was this: the human had bitten her back, and it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like a challenge returned. From that moment on, she couldn't stop thinking about him. And the other warriors? They began to look at Leo differently, too. Something had changed. And it all started with one unexpected bite. Her pack laughed, but she couldn't forget his bite. The training hall buzzed with laughter after Leo walked away. Kira stood still, her arms crossed tight, hiding the sting not from his teeth, but from the way he turned his back on her like she meant nothing. Around her, the warriors chuckled and barked out teasing jokes. "Bitten by a human pup. Careful, Kira. He might claim you next." Their words hit like arrows, but she didn't show it. She bared her teeth in a forced grin and growled. Back. At least he had some fight. But deep inside, her mind was spinning. Why didn't he back down? Why didn't he flinch? Why did his bite still burn not with pain, but something else? That night, while the rest of the warriors celebrated a good day's training, Kira stayed behind. She stood near the same wall where Leo had walked past her. She sniffed the air. His scent still lingered calm, focused, and strangely warm. It wasn't the smell of fear. It was steady, confident. She hated that it fascinated her. The next morning, she watched him again. Leo was working on a large energy conduit near the central tower. Tools in hand, shirt damp with sweat, he hummed to himself while balancing a heavy coil on his shoulder. He didn't look around, didn't notice her watching. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. She wasn't used to that. Usually, when She walked into a room, males straightened up. Females stepped aside. But this human? He acted like she was just part of the background. And that made her tail twitch. When their eyes finally met again, it was brief. He nodded once, polite, no fear, no mockery. Kira blinked. Why did that simple nod feel more powerful than any roar? Later, she spoke to her older sister, a seasoned warrior with her own squad. What would you do if someone bit back? She asked, pretending the question was casual. Her sister laughed. If it was a human? I'd bite again harder or walk away before things get confusing. Confusing? Sometimes the strongest aren't the ones with teeth, Kira, her sister warned softly. Sometimes it's the one who knows when not to fight and still wins. That night, Kira couldn't sleep. Her shoulder still tingled where he bit her. She kept touching the spot, wondering why her body remembered it so clearly. Was this respect? Was it something else? She didn't know yet. But one thing was certain, Leo had done more than bite her. He had left a mark that didn't fade. She tried to break him, but he played a different game Kira was tired of feeling. Off balance. Ever since the bite, nothing made sense. Her instincts told her to prove herself again to show the others, and Leo, that she was still the stronger one. The other warriors had stopped teasing her, but they hadn't forgotten. Neither had she, so she made a plan. She approached Leo while he was repairing a control unit near the training field. Her voice was sharp. You, human, a challenge, now. Leo raised his head slowly, wiping sweat from his brow. A challenge? He asked, a small smile tugging at his lips. You think you're clever. Let's see if you can keep up. The Canary warriors gathered quickly. They loved a good test, and this one was personal. The challenge was simple. A race through the Fifenabad. A race through the challenge was simple. A race through the chimple obstacle course, followed by a strength trial. Everyone expected Kira to crush him. She was faster. She was trained. He was just an engineer. But as the test began, something strange happened. Kira dashed ahead with lightning speed, but when she looked back, Leo wasn't chasing. He was walking, calm, focused. Instead of climbing the walls like her, he used broken crates to leap across. Instead of pushing through the strength trial with raw power, he used ropes and pulleys to shift the weights with less effort. The crowd watched in silence, confused, intrigued. By the end, Leo hadn't won by speed or muscle, but he hadn't lost either. He finished every part using his brain, not his body. And he smiled the whole time, like it was just another job to be done. Kira stood in front of him, panting, tail twitching. You mocked me, she said low. No, Leo replied simply. I just don't fight like you do. Her ears twitched. No anger, no fear. Just truth that hit harder than any blow. One of the elder warriors, watching from the edge, muttered, maybe. Strength is more than fangs. Kira didn't respond. She just stared at Leo, her chest tight with a feeling she couldn't name. She had tried to break him, to push him into her world. But instead, he had pulled her into his. That night, Kira sat alone on the high ridge outside the base, staring at the stars. For the first time, she wondered, what if this human wasn't trying to beat her? What if he was just being himself? And why did that make her feel like she was the one being tested? She didn't understand it yet, but something inside her head changed again, and it wasn't going away. Fire in the sky, and no one but him by her side. The night was supposed to be quiet. Kira sat in the control tower alone, staring at the empty field below. The sky above the Canary outpost was clear, with stars shining like silver dust. But her thoughts were anything but peaceful. Ever since the challenge, Leo hadn't looked at her the same way. He didn't avoid her. He didn't chase her. He just existed. Calm, steady, like nothing she did could shake him. and that bothered her more than any wound ever had. Then, without warning, the alarm screamed. Red lights flashed across the base. The ground trembled. A distant boom echoed from the west perimeter wall. An unknown ship had crashed through the outer shield. Explosions followed, one after another. Kira leaped to her feet, grabbing her weapon. Outside, chaos broke loose. Canary warriors scrambled, shouting orders and rushing into formation. But inside the base, systems flickered, doors jammed, and the power grid began to shut down. In the engineering bay, Leo was already working. Sparks flew. Wires hissed. And as he typed into the failing console, a shadow fell across the door. It was Kira, eyes glowing, weapon drawn. "You shouldn't be here," she barked. Leo didn't. "Stop typing. I'm trying to keep the lights on. The base is under attack. I know. That's why I'm here." Suddenly, the ceiling shook. A plasma blast tore through the wall, sending both of them crashing to the floor. Smoke poured in. The emergency doors locked. They were trapped. Kira groaned and looked over. Leo was coughing, but alive. He pulled himself up and looked around with urgency. "We don't have long," he said. She grabbed her weapon, ready to fight anything that came through. "I'll hold the door." "No. You'll help me reroute the power." She turned, shocked. "What?" He pointed to the panel. "You're strong. Use that. Pry open the conduit. I'll do the wiring." She hesitated for just a second, then obeyed. Together, they worked fast, Kira using her strength, Leo using his mind. Explosions rumbled in the distance. The outpost trembled under fire. But in that small smoke-filled room, something powerful was happening. They weren't rivals now. They were a team. When the power surged back on, the base defenses kicked in. Cannons rotated, shields rose. The enemy ship was blown out of the sky moments later. The battle outside was over. But the battle inside, Kira? Just beginning. She looked at Leo. His face dirty, his hands burned, his eyes steady. He had saved them. Again. Without weapons, without threats. Just with his will and quiet strength. He stood beside her like it was nothing. But to her, it meant everything. And for the first time in her warrior life, Kira felt something she didn't know how to fight. Gratitude, respect, and maybe something deeper. Blood, smoke, and something she couldn't name. The smoke had cleared, but the feeling in Kira's chest hadn't. The battle outside was over. Broken enemy drones lay scattered across the sand, and the sky was quiet again. But inside Kira, a storm was building, and its name was Leo. She walked beside him as they returned to the medical station. He had refused a stretcher, brushing off his burns like they were nothing. But Kira saw how his hand trembled, how his steps were uneven. Still, he walked tall, like pain didn't own him. That shook her more than the explosions. In the medical bay, the healers tried to rush him onto a table. Leo resisted. "Check the systems first," he said. "The generator's still unstable." Kira growled at the healer. "Do as he says." The healer blinked at her in shock, but obeyed. Hours later, the base was stable again. But Kira wasn't. She found Leo resting under the shadow of a tower, legs stretched, eyes closed. His arm was wrapped in clean bandages. The way the wind moved his hair, the way he sat like he was finally breathing again, made her stomach twist. She crouched beside him quietly. "You're hurt," she said. "I've been worse," he replied without opening his eyes. "You shouldn't have covered me from that blast," she added, voice low. He finally opened his eyes. "Then let you die? That's not how I work." She looked away. "We don't do that. Not in battle. We fight alone. We survive alone." Leo sat up, his eyes locking with hers. Then maybe your people need to learn something new. Kira's ears lowered slightly. His voice wasn't angry, but firm, honest. Her hand lifted. Without thinking, she touched the torn patch on his sleeve where the fire had kissed his skin. Her fingers trembled. That's when she realized it. She wasn't shaking from fear or anger. It was something else. He looked at her hand, then up. At her face. You okay? She quickly pulled her hand back. I don't know, she whispered. You confuse me. How? You fight with your heart. Not with teeth or fists. It makes no sense. But it makes me want to follow you. He didn't laugh, didn't tease. He just nodded once and said, then maybe we're not so different. Her chest ached in a new way. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to beat someone. She didn't want to lead, dominate, or stand above him. She just wanted to stand beside him. And when Leo leaned his head back and closed his eyes again, she stayed right there watching him in silence, her tail slowly curling around her boots. She didn't understand it fully, but she knew this. He had bled for her, stood beside her, and never asked for anything. In her world of war, that was rare. And in her heart, something had just begun. She bit again, but this time, everything was different. The moonlight over the Canary outpost was soft that night, painting the rocky ground in pale silver. Warriors had returned to their routines. Repairs continued. But Kira couldn't sleep. She stood alone near the edge of the barracks, watching the human quarters from a distance. Her thoughts were wild, tangled like battle wires. Ever since the attack, Leo had lived inside her head. The way he looked at her, not like a beast, not like a warrior to defeat, but like someone he saw. She didn't know what that meant, but her instincts were restless. Her pulse quickened every time she saw him. Her tail flicked uncontrollably when he walked by. Her heart, the same one trained to stay cold in war, was too loud now. In her culture, biting was more than dominance. It was connection. To bite and be bitten without fear was rare, something sacred, something close to a bond. She had bitten him once in anger. Now, standing outside his door, she raised her hand. She didn't even understand why she knocked. Leo opened the door, surprised to see her. He was shirtless, a towel over his shoulder, steam rising from behind him. He had just finished cleaning up, but his calm expression didn't change. Kira? She didn't speak. Her body moved first. She stepped forward, grabbed his arm gently, and leaned in, biting his shoulder again. This time, it wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a hurt or test. It was a message. A choice. Leo froze. Not in fear, but in shock. Kira backed away quickly, her voice quiet. I don't understand what's happening to me, but I don't want to fight you anymore. He looked at her for a long time, the red light from his room glowing behind him. Then he stepped forward, slowly raised his hand and placed it gently on her neck, right where her pulse throbbed. I never wanted to fight you, he said softly. I just didn't want you to see me as weak. Her eyes widened. You're not weak. You're stronger than anyone I've known. A silence fell between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Leo broke it with a smile. That bite felt different. She nodded once, because it was. He didn't bite back this time. He didn't need to, because now they both understood. It wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about showing strength or control. It was about trust. Kira turned to leave, her steps slower, her heart racing. As she walked away, Leo's voice stopped her. Kira, he said, whatever this is, I'm not afraid of it. She didn't answer, but the smile that curled on her lips said everything. Something new had begun. Not war, not rivalry, but something far more dangerous and beautiful. Not a bite, but a bond. Days passed, but something had shifted. Everyone felt it, even if no one dared say it. Kira was different now. Her steps were calmer, her challenges quieter, and when she crossed paths with Leo, the entire base seemed to pause. The warriors who once laughed now watched in silence. The humans on base offered curious glances, unsure of what had changed between the fierce Canary warrior and the quiet Earth engineer. The truth was everything had changed. Kira no longer looked at Leo like a rival. She looked at him like a mystery she no longer needed to solve, only understand. And Leo? He never tried to tame her. He just accepted her for who she was, fangs and fury included. Then, the day of the Unity ceremony arrived. It was rare for humans and Canary to gather as equals, but after the joint battle victory, the elders had no choice. The humans were to be honored. And to everyone's shock, Leo was invited to stand on the sacred platform reserved only for those the Canary saw as true warriors. He stepped forward humbly, wearing simple clothes, no weapons, no armor. Just calm dignity. When Kira stepped beside him, in full ceremonial gear, her tail curled once around her leg, then straightened. She turned to face the crowd. Her voice was clear and strong. This human stood where warriors fled. He bit back when I bit him, not with hatred, but with courage. He did not challenge our laws. He changed how we see them. The crowd murmured, eyes wide. No Canary had ever spoken like this before a gathering. And no one had ever spoken so openly about a bond. Then Kira turned to Leo. And in front of everyone, she lowered her head, not in shame, but in respect. Leo, surprised, gently reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. I never came here to fight, he said softly, but I'd fight for you. There were no more jokes from the crowd. No more laughter, only silence and then slow, steady applause. Later that night, under the same stars where it all began, Kira sat beside Leo outside the barracks. No war, no noise. Just them. I didn't know humans could bite so hard, she joked. He grinned. I didn't know aliens could fall so fast. She leaned against him, her tail brushing his side. We don't call it falling, she whispered. What do you call it? She looked up at him, her golden eyes soft for the first time. Bonding. And this time, there was no need for teeth, no need for tests, because what they shared now went far beyond instinct. It was real, and it had begun with one bite but ended in something far stronger, understanding, respect, and something neither of them ever expected: love.